Hello learners, welcome to NIOS Studio. Today we are going to study Chapter 6 of Psychology course, Secondary 222. The name of this chapter is Memory and I am Alankriti Sharma, Academic Officer Psychology at NIOS. So let's begin. For today's session, the objectives will be, after watching this video, you will be able to firstly explain the nature of memory, differentiate between the stages of memory, thirdly describe forgetting and list some strategies for enhancing memory. So in today's class, this class will be helpful for your subject also, but it will have great implications for your normal day-to-day life also, because whenever we talk of memory, we understand it in terms of a daily thing which we are using. So for any day-to-day activity which we have to perform, we use some or the other form of memory. So today we are going to understand about this basic psychological process. So we have covered some of the psychological processes like learning, like perception. So today we are going to study about memory, and this chapter will be helpful for your studies as well, because most of your exams or tests or any other sort of competitive exams, they try to test your memory in some or the other form. So I hope this session helps you with your day-to-day life as well, and you become better at memorizing and understanding things. So let's begin. So firstly we will talk of what memory is. So memory basically refers to the process of storing the outcomes of learning in the form of information that can be retrieved when required. So when we talk of memory, it is not only we are not only storing facts or our day-to-day happening or what has happened, information that we receive, but we also encode it and we retrieve it in the form of information. So when we were talking of learning, we specifically talked of certain behavioral changes. So in terms of memory, when we talk of memory, it has a little different definition than learning, because we are storing information, whatever the outcomes of learning in terms of information, and we are retrieving it when we are requiring that information. Next, memory refers to a set of processes involved in storing information. This specific process is termed as retention. So memory is involved, basically it has numerous processes which are involved. It is not a singular unitary system, but it has multiple processes which are involved and which we will be discussing in the subsequent slides. But when we talk of retention, we talk of storing information particularly. Next we talk of memory. Memory basically it can be defined as perceptually active mental systems that receive, encodes, modifies and retrieves information. So these are all the processes which are involved in memory. So when we are talking of memory, it is not only retrieval of information, it also includes receiving of information. So first you receive the information, whatever is happening around you, or if you read a text, you are reading it and then you are receiving information. So when you have read it, you have received the information. So the first step is happened. Next we encode the information. So whatever the information that you get, you are trying to make sense out of it and you are storing it in your brains. And firstly, before storing it, you are trying to encode it. So you are encoding it, then you are modifying the information. So this is a very interesting fact about memory. It is not just about what you have received. You also tend to modify information. You make sense out of it. Like we talked about this in perception also. There are certain your past experiences, your processes which are involved in perception. Similarly, in memory also, you are modifying that information which you are receiving from the environment, and you are modifying this information with the help of your past experiences, with your previous knowledge, and then you are making sense out of it and you are storing this information. So this is the part of storing. So till before storing, there are 2-3 processes happening. First is you are receiving information, then you are encoding it, then you are modifying it, and this whole process, then afterwards storing happens. Then there is information retrieval which is happening. So this is one of the most important part, because maybe you have stored information, maybe you have encoded it, everything has happened properly, but you need to recall that information or retrieve that information back in order to use that information. So memory is basically retrieval is also a part or the process of memory. So firstly encoding is happening, then modifying is happening, then you are storing the information, then whenever you are requiring that information, you have to retrieve this information. So this whole process is called as a memory processes. So memory not only involves retention, but it also involves encoding, it also involves in modifying the information, it also basically involves information retrieval. Next, when we are talking of memory, so how we are trying to study this basic psychological process. So it has basically 3 approaches. So the first approach is we are trying to study it through recognition. In this process, you are checking the stimulus with your memory content to find a match. So I'll give you an example. In recognition, what is happening, you have certain information in your brain and you are basically using that information to find whether the stimulus is present or not. So for an example, when you are not able to remember someone's name, you might have encountered this situation or a similar situation. For example, you met a person and you know that you have seen this person is known to you, but you are unable to remember the name of that person. Here what has happened, you have recognized the person, but you are unable to recall the name of the person. So here recognition has happened, but the recall of the name has not happened. So these are the 2 approaches of studying memory. We have understood about recognition, now we understand about recall. When we talk of recall is basically the process of using general stimulus and finding the information about it from memory. For example, when you are trying to remember a name without a face in the front. So for example, I gave you the example, like if you try to remember the name of a person, you try to remember the name of the cousin from your maternal side. I am asking you if you can remember that name. Here the process of recall is happening, and suppose I show you the face of that person and I ask you what is the name of this person. Here I am asking you to recognize, and in the first case I have asked you to recall. Next we are talking of relearning. So in relearning, basically the method of learning the material another time. It usually takes less time than the original learning. So here you are basically trying to attend to the information once again, and once you have learned it and you are relearning it, it usually takes less time in comparison to the first time in which the learning was happening. So here is a comparison between recall and recognition. So in recall, when you are given a question in exam, you use the process of recall. For example, make a list of the major types of memory. So this is the question. Here I am asking you to list major types of memory, and this is a question where you have to answer it in a written form. On the other hand, recognition is basically when you answer multiple choice question. So you are asked to match the information with the provided pieces of information. For example, which of these are not the major types of memory? So the questions are same, but what I am trying to see, whether I am using recall as an approach to study your memory, or whether I am asking you to recognize which of these are not the major types of memory. So here the approach changes in which we are trying to study the process of memory. Next we come on to the types of memory. So research basically states that memory is not a single or unitary system. So as we have discussed that memory is not a single system. It has multiple processes which are involved in the process. So we are trying to study what are the different types of memory and whether how are these memories are different from each other. So first type of memory we are going to study is a sensory memory. It is based on a model which you are going to study in your senior secondary level, but for here for this class the discussion would remain till understanding the types of memory only. So when we talk of sensory memory is basically the information that you are receiving from your senses, and it stays with you for a half a second. So I'll ask you to do an activity. So you keep a paper approximately 12 inches away from yourself, and then for few seconds, then after that you close your eyes and try to see that image and notice how much time has passed. So a clear visual image of any object will last in the sensory memory for about half a second after the stimulus is removed. So when I remove the paper, or when you close your eyes, after that for only half a second that image of the paper will be available to you, and this is what your sensory memory is. Your whatever the objects you are seeing in your surrounding, if you try to focus on it and then you shift the focus from that object, you will remember that object, or that object will remain in your memory, sensory memory, for half a second. So this is what we call the sensory memory. Whatever the information that your senses are receiving, this form a part of your sensory memory. So sensory memory basically holds representation of sensory inputs for a brief period of time depending upon the modality involved, and there are different sensory registers for each senses. For example, for eyes, your eyes will be holding the image for half a second. Similarly, echoic memory, a part of sensory memory which is responsible for hearing, so it will hold the information in terms of sounds, voices. So this is another type of sensory memory. And what is the speciality of this sensory memory? It is basically holding the sensory inputs for a very short period of time, and different senses receive different types of sensory memories. Next we talk of the short term memory. So short term memory is basically holds the amount of information for a brief period of time. It usually lasts 30 seconds or lesser than that, and short term memory is more than a passive memory, passive holding area, and it involves active processing of information. This finding has led the psychologists to use the term working memory instead of short term memory. It means that something active goes on during the short term memory. So I'll ask you to do an activity with me. I will give you some set of questions, some numbers I'm going to tell, and you have to recall that after each set. And you have to keep writing down simultaneously whether you were able to recall the numbers properly, whether you were able to recall the numbers or not. So let's begin. Set 1, 4, 2, 8. Whether you were able to recall the numbers, you keep on writing Y for yes, yes you were able to recall, and N for no. Set 2, 1, 4, 6, 3. Set 3, 5, 7, 4, 9, 2. Next set 6 0 8 1 3 5. Next set 1 8 4 7 9 2 6. Next set 3 5 0 1 7 4 2 9. Next set 2 7 3 9.
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने, जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना
about short term memory, and we were doing an activity. So for set 1, whether you were able to recall, I am going to repeat the numbers and you have to write whether you were able to recall the numbers or not. So for set 1 is 4 2 8. The next set is 1 4 6 3. The next set 5 7 4 9 2. Next set 6 0 8 1 3 5. And in the next set we have 1 8 4 7 9 2 6. The next set we have 3 5 0 1 7 4 2 9. Next and the last set we have 2 7 3 9 6 8 1 4 5. So I want to ask you, how many digits can you
जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने, जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने, हम अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने, अपना दीपक स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने, जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने राहों को आलोकित करने। समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो, संसाधन समय की सीमा से विद्यालय जो मुक्त हो, कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो, कभी पढ़े हम कहीं पढ़े वे विषय की लोच से युक्त हो, मित्रों हम उठे और जागे, जीवन ये प्रकाशित करने, राहों को आलोकित करने।
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर
शिक्षा परीक्षा का अवसर एक बार ही क्यों मिलता फिर दुनिया में इसके केंद्र बात कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने, हम अपना जीवन स्वयं बने, हम अपना रास्ता स्वयं चुने, कोई मन चाहा केंद्र चुने, स्वयं बने हम।
So before the break we did an activity and I told you a list of numbers. So this was to understand the characteristics of short term memory, which is STM. So STM basically has a limited capacity to hold information and it tends to hold information about 5 to 9 units, and this is also called as the magical number 7 plus minus 2 of information at one go. So if you are trying to remember more information than 5 units or 9 units, if the information is more than the range of 5 to 9, then there are chances that you might not be able to recall the information. So if the number of units go higher, new information displaces or writes over the existing units. So in the example given earlier, it is easier to remember a telephone number of consisting of 7 to 9. Another thing which we have to talk when we try to understand the characteristics of STM is that the limitation capacity of STM, we can increase the limitation capacity by using a mechanism called as chunking. So for example, here on your screen there is a number which is 19472002194 and this is a 12 digit number which basically exceeds the digits which you can remember. So here what you can do is you can break this number into into basically years, into 4 4 4 4, and here you have 3 chunks of 4 numbers each. So you can remember it in terms of 1947, 2002, 1941, and here all the 3 numbers can be remembered as calendar years. So you can remember a 12 digit number by breaking it into chunks of 4, or you can do the same thing with other information that is available to you. So if you break a large information into chunks, it is better remembered. So this can also be useful for your test, as well as whenever you are taking any sort of test or exam. Here what you should do and try to focus is basically you should try to break information into chunks so that it reaches into the capacity and you are better able to recall or remember the information. Next we talk of long term memory. What is long term memory? Long term memory, it basically refers to the memory system for the retention of large amount of information for long period of time. It is the memory system that permits to remember events that happened many years ago, yesterday, last year, and so on. It also helps us to learn factual information and learn different subjects. So when we talk of long term memory has an infinite capacity, and the information, if the information once goes into the LTM or the long term memory system, then that information will be remembered for life. For example, if I ask you what is the first birthday that you remember? So if when you were 6, how did you celebrate your birthday? So if that information has gone to your long term memory, there are high chances that you will be able to remember that information throughout your life. So the aim of our memory system, or in order to increase our functioning, is to basically try to remember the information for a long period of time. So we try to push the information into LTM, and how basically we can do this is by paying attention. So when we talk of how does the information enters LTM, the first thing is by paying attention. So when we pay attention to a piece of information and engage in active rehearsal, the material is stored in the long term memory. So when I am telling you active rehearsal, what does the word active rehearsal here means? You can pay attention to the content or the information that is available. Then you have to make associations. For example, if I ask you to remember a date, and if you find if that date is similar to the date of your birthday, so there are chances that you will remember that date, because you have been able to actively rehearse and you are able to relate at a personal level with the information. So information in the sensory memory, it also enters the short term memory when it becomes the focus of our attention. And if we do not pay attention to the incoming sensory information, the material fades and quickly disappears. The next other two methods is maintenance rehearsal and elaborative rehearsals, and the other one is semantic encoding. So these are the ways in which you can transfer the information into your LTM. So what is maintenance rehearsal? Maintenance rehearsal is revising and repeating that information continuously till the time it reaches your LTM. So you might have learned tables in maths. So when you were young, you might have repeated those tables again and again in order to remember them for a longer period of time. So till now also you remember the tables because you have practiced it or repeated it enough number of times. So this is what maintenance rehearsal means. So if I give you a number and you keep on repeating that number multiple times or revising or repeating, so here you are using the process of maintenance rehearsal in order to get the information into LTM. So this is one way. The second way is elaborative rehearsal and semantic encoding. So these are the two related themes. In elaborative rehearsal, what is happening is you are trying to find meaning and semantically encoding it. So if you try to understand the meaning of the content or the information which is given to you and make personal connections or try to relate it with other things already in your memory, it will be better remembered. So there are two types of processes basically here. One is rote learning, which is maintenance rehearsal. You are keep on repeating it, and you are keeping the information you are basically transferring it to the LTM by repeating it, and this is known as rote memorization or through maintenance rehearsal. And elaborative rehearsal is basically you are making the information, you are making that information related to other information which are there in your already there in your memory. So you are using this elaborative rehearsal by making meaning of the material or stimuli that is given to you. So these are the 2 or 3 ways in which you can transfer the information into LTM. Next, this is a comparison of the different memory systems which we were talking of. So here the characteristics, first we talk of the characteristics of sensory memory. The first characteristics is duration. So we have talked of duration. In terms of sensory memory, the duration is very less, which is in terms of iconic memory it is only half a second, and echoic memory is about 2 seconds. So if you are receiving the information through iconic, means through eyes, so that sensory memory will keep it for half a second only, and if you are receiving the information or stimuli through your ears and you're hearing something, that information will be available to you for 2 seconds only. So iconic is basically seeing part and echoic is the hearing part. Next we have short term memory. So 20 to 30 seconds the memory remains in your short term memory, and the long term memory, when we talk of, it is the lifetime. Once the memory or the event or the stimuli goes into the LTM, it is stored for a lifetime. Then the capacity, sensory memory has a large capacity because the information which is coming, it is going as fast, vanishing fast as well. So the capacity for storage is large. Short term memory, we did an experiment, an activity, and you got to know that it is 7 plus minus 2. So the range is 5 to 9. For some people it might be better, but on average it is 7 plus minus 2 only. And long term memory, it has an unlimited capacity. Next we are talking of forgetting. How does forgetting is happening? So in term, when we are talking of sensory memory, through trace decay, sensory memory basically vanishes or leaves through the process of trace decay. We will be discussing this in the subsequent slides. And in short term memory, we are basically decay, interference and displacement is happening. And in long term memory, interference, decay and lack of cue are the primary reasons. When we talk of encoding, it is in sensory memory, it is through senses, visual or auditory, and in short term memory it is phonological or visual semantic. Phonological or visual semantic. And the long term memory, we have semantic and sensory encoding. Next we have retrieval. Retrieval is basically how are you bringing that information back into your awareness once you have stored it. So in terms of sensory memory, it is through parallel search, and in terms of short term memory, it is serial exhaustive search, and in long term memory, it is through parallel distributed search. So we will be discussing about this process in the coming slides. Firstly, we talk of the classification of memory. So there are different types of memory, and you might have seen in movies or in shows that when they show you a case of a person who is not able to remember some people of his or her life, or some events of his or her life, it is not necessary that all of the memory of that person is gone. So it means that there are different types of memories and they are stored in different parts of our brain. So firstly we talk of the semantic memory. So it is a flow chart which is showing you about what all types of memory are there. So firstly we will be discussing about the semantic memory. So semantic memory is the memory which when we are testing or when we are giving exams, this is one of the most common memory which is at play. So this deals with the knowledge, meaning and generalized experiences. Whatever we remember from the books and the information about the world, events and meanings of the words, they are included in it. For example, if I ask you, when is the National Science Day celebrated? So this is a kind of semantic memory. I am asking you about a fact or a knowledge which you might have read about. Or if I ask you which is Dadasaheb Phalke awards are given in which field. So this is an example of semantic memory. Basically it revolves around the knowledge, meaning and generalized experiences. Next we talk of episodic memory. Episodic memory is basically certain episodes of your life and how do you remember them. So it refers to the experiences which are personal to the individual. For example, your experiences when you went to the fair. How was your first day at school or work or at college? How did you celebrate your 5th birthday or your 6th birthday or your 18th birthday? So any events or celebration or significant episodes which have happened in your life, how do you store that? And basically it covers all your experiences and these are personal to you. Next we talk of procedural memory. So this deals with the memory for actions or way of doing certain things or performing certain activities. For example, you might have learned to swim. So it is also an action. How did you, what are the steps in terms of learning to swim? So there are people who tend to forget everything, but in case of memory loss cases, there are people who forget about how things are done, but they tend to remember the skill set. So this is a type of procedural memory. How to ride a bicycle, how to skate, how to swim. These are the example of procedural memories, and these are very resilient to forgetting, because once you learn to ride a bicycle, it is there are very less chances that you are going to forget it. Next we talk of meta memory. So meta memory is basically memory and awareness about your memory. So it is memory for your memory. So we not only remember things but also remember that we can remember. So people may be good or poor in understanding their own memory. So meta memory basically is your own understanding about the memory. For example, some people have an awareness that, oh, I am very good with with numbers. I can remember long numbers, or I am very good with names. I tend to remember names of people. On the other hand, there are some people who don't know which area or which part of their memory is good or which is bad. So this is meta memory, having a memory or awareness of your memory. Next we talk of stages of memory. So we have talked of the different memory systems that were present there, like short-term memory, sensory memory, long-term memory. So this is a flow chart which is showing you how the information travels and how is the different processes of memory happening. So the first step is the sensory input is received, then that sensory input travels through the sensory memory. The sensory memory then, if you pay attention and if it is important, then it gets transferred to short term memory. In short term memory there are two ways, like I told you. You can do maintenance rehearsal or elaborative rehearsal, and through these two processes the information will get transferred to long term memory. So this is how the information travels through different stages, and then how does it reach to the long term memory. Next we talk of an important part. Like we all have experienced that we tend to forget certain things. We study for an exam and then in the paper we are not able to remember certain things. We are not able to answer the question properly. So why is this happening? So we have studied the process of memory or memorizing, and then we are trying to study here why the process of forgetting is happening and how we can become better at memorizing things. So the first theory is the decay theory. So it is not a very well accepted theory right now, but the earlier psychologists, they believed that there is a gradual fading of memory traces or decay that happens with the lapse of time. So they said that whenever you are receiving a kind of an information, then there are certain traces of that information which remain in your brains, and it makes an imprint or an engram sort of a thing, and with the passage of time, that imprint or that trace which the memory has made, it basically fades away. So they tell that passing of time is the main reason of why forgetting is happening, as the trace becomes less or it fades away. But they are not able to tell you why certain information is still there and you tend to forget the other part of the information. So passing of time therefore be considered as the main cause of forgetting. So it cannot be considered as the main cause of forgetting. So there are other things also which play a role in the process of forgetting. So what are those things? The first thing is, there are two things. Interference is responsible for the process of forgetting. So what is interference? Let us talk of that. Interference is when two parallel information are competing for the retrieval part. So you learn a thing, you learn a topic A, then you learn topic B, and then I ask you to recall topic A. So the information which you have received from A and B, that both the information are competing at the time of retrieval. So they will be competing with each other, and due to this process of interference, some part of the information is lost and some part is we tend to forget it. So let's see through an example. So there are two types of basically interference. One is retroactive and the second one is proactive. We will be studying each with an example. So on 15th of November 2023, I ask you to learn material A, and on 20th of November, I ask you to learn material B. Then today I ask you to recall whatever you have learned in material A, and I take a test of you, a recall based test. So there are chances that whatever you have learned yesterday from material B, this information will be competing with the information that you have received on 15th November. So both these information are going to mix up and you are going to miss some part of material A and you might mix some part of material B. So this is what retroactive interference is. Here I am asking you to recall A, which is the old material which you have learned. Old, I am referring here is just with respect to the timeline. So this is the old material which I am asking you to learn, to remember, and here the new material is interfering with the old material. So another example which is also given in your book is there is a Punjabi language class on Monday. Then there is Bengali language class on Tuesday, and on Wednesday I take a test of Punjabi test on Wednesday. So here the information that you received on Tuesday is going to impact your capacity on the Wednesday's test. So this is a similar example. In the first example I gave you with an example of material, and then the second one is subject. Here the retroactive interference is happening. Another example is of proactive interference. So in proactive interference, you are basically, for example, if you tend to drive a scooter with gear and then you buy a new scooter which has no gear, which is an automatic drive, and then while you are driving the new scooter, you change the gear in the new scooter. So what is happening? Because you are so used to changing the gears from your old information or from your old practice, here the new things you're not able to adapt to new things because of the interference with the old information. So this is known as proactive interference. So proactive interference basically explains one's ability to acquire new knowledge or habit because of the powerful interference from the old habits. So here new habits are not formed due to the interference from the old habit, whereas in case of retroactive interference, the old material or the old habits, these are not being continued due to the interference of the new habits. So this is what interference is all about. The third theory is, it says of levels of processing. So they say that while learning some material, we tend to detail and process at a deeper level or neglect it and attend at a surface level. this may be the cause of this may be the cause of forgetting. So what is happening is, some information we are not paying that much attention and we are not processing it properly, and other information we might be able to process it properly. This is the reason of forgetting. So the information which is not processed properly will be forgetted eventually, and the information which is properly processed and at a deeper level, we are going to remember it. So this was all about the causes and the theories of forgetting. Next we talk of the strategies for enhancing memories and what we can do. So these are basically similar, or we tend to, whatever we have studied in terms of forgetting, we tend to avoid that in order to enhance our memory. So the first step is we tend to process this deeply. If you want to learn something and you wish to enter information into your long term memory, you have to think about it and you need to consider its meaning and examine its relationship to the information you already have. So you make more connections and you try to interact with the information, make it personally relevant to you and process it properly, deeply, then the chances of you recalling that information will be high. Next next is attention, and if you want to learn something well and ensure its retention in long term memory, you have to put in conscious effort to attend to it carefully. So the first step is basically you give attention to whatever you need to memorize or whatever you want to keep it in your LTM. So attend it properly and then process it properly. So these are the two basic steps when we are talking of enhancing our memory. Next is we try to minimize the interference. So you have learned that interference is a major cause of forgetting, and you should try to reduce it as much as possible. So there are a few steps which you can do in order to avoid or minimize the interference. First is take sufficient breaks between similar subjects, then plan short sessions, and thirdly then plan a gap between similar subjects. So try to study subjects which are different from each other, or another thing which you can do is take a nap, or basically if nap is not possible then plan short sessions and give sufficient break between, if you are trying to study two similar subjects, so that the material is stored at a different point of time and chances of it interfering with one another is less. Next is distributed practice. So while learning some material, it is beneficial to learn it using distributed practice in which there is a gap between trials. So here you can do what you can use the Pomodoro technique. It is basically you study for some time and then you give a short break in between and then you continue studying. So giving breaks between study session is beneficial if you want to remember the information for a long period of time. So basically breaks and rest periods are important, and then another point is you should divide the chapters in parts. So here also the chunking or dividing the chapters in parts are going to help you in order to take information in a better way and encode it so that it is available to you at the retrieval time. Next we have using memory aids. So there are different types of memory aids that people use, and there may be various cues, indicators and signs to connect events. This often facilitates remembering. So you can use multiple things. For example, people use method of loci, where they associate a place with an object and then they try to remember information through that. So you can use multiple aids, like for example you make associations, or you find similarities between two things, and so on. Next we have shorthand cues. These are the mnemonic device. So you can develop your own shorthand cues to memorize long list of items. You can use the first letter of each word or items and construct a unique word. So for example, one of the most common used shorthand cue is VIBGYOR, where V stands for violet, I stands for indigo, B for blue, G for green, Y for yellow, and O for orange, and R for red. So there are ways in which you can form shorthand cues, and it also helps you in the process of recalling. So this word is VIBGYOR word. It is relatively easier for you to learn rather than the whole color scheme. So this word acts as a cue in order for you to remember the whole rainbow. So this is a diagram which I have taken from your book only, and it basically tries to tell you about how you can make learning or memorizing better. And some of the things are basically taking short notes, making mind maps, highlighting the parts, then linking the information with the already existing knowledge, and trying to form associations. So more the information is, whatever the information you are receiving, more associations should be formed. In the greater the association that you form, the higher the chances that the information will be recalled. So if you want to remember more and more information, try to make it personally relevant and try to form more links and associations. Another thing which we were talking was mnemonic devices or acronyms, like I talked about VIBGYOR. Next is basically understanding and paying attention. So it is basically good for you to encode an information semantically. If you try to find meaning and make an understanding out of that meaning, it surely is going to be remembered better than just rote memorizing it. Next we come on to the last topic, which is repression, and which is forgetting which is happening due to painful events. So this was a concept which was given by Freud, and he talked of that there are certain events and experiences that are so painful that we tend to eliminate them from our consciousness. So this is called as repression. Basically he said that there are painful experiences and we try to forget about these experiences by repressing it into the unconscious, and there might be some psychological issues which might arise due to these forceful repression which our memory does. So thank you.